Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Reviewing Comics with me, your host, Alexander Turbin. This week we're going to be doing Samurai 7, a 1992 comic by Gauntlet Comics, a subsidiary of Calibre Comics. But before we get into that, I want to show you some of my own comics. If you decide that you would like to check these out, it would help my artwork, and it would help out the channel, and it would just make everybody so darn happy. And anyway, it's random access, and I produce this once a month for my Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/Alexander Turbin, and I produce a full-size, full-color, 12-page comic book every month for $2 a month for my patrons. And I also list these on my own website, and I collect them into their own books and at alexanderturbin.com. And you could also just message me on Instagram at alexturbin04401. So now that we got that out of the way, Samurai 7. Like I said, it's from 1992 and from Calibre. It's Gauntlet, but it's Calibre. I don't know the intricacies of how their publications went. Apparently, this only went 3 issues, but it was. I just read this, and this was a pretty good read. I didn't read this when I was younger. I must have either picked this up. I don't think I picked it up recently, but I definitely didn't pick it up in the 90s or when I was really going to the comic shop every Wednesday or whatever. It's written and illustrated by Patrick Zircher, who went on to do a whole bunch of stuff. He worked for Marvel and doing Thunderbolts and stuff, I guess. And then he went to DC and worked on Superman and Teen Titans and some other stuff. His work drastically, wouldn't say drastically, but it definitely changes over the course of his career, which everybody's does. But I think he loses a little bit of his. I think he was really maybe anime inspired, and like so many other anime artists, like Matt Wagner or Joe Mad or whatever, they become inspired by anime and manga, and then just kind of change their style or evolve their style as they go along, and like doing the different projects they work on and stuff. So it's definitely anime inspired, but as he goes along in his career, he changes it up a little bit, which is neither here nor there. So it's Samurai 7, which is the only reason it's called Samurai 7 is there's 7 superhero characters. I don't know if the next issues they go into a little bit more of how it's like the 7 samurai movies or Magnificent 7 or anything like that. I don't think that it's really like that anyway. I think there's just 7 Japanese characters or inspired Japanese characters, and there's 7 of them, and they are like guardians, I guess. And so before I get into how I like the art and the story, let's check out the book itself. And there's this character, and supposedly he's a dwarf, which he doesn't really look it. He kind of just looks like a short, older dude. But I mean, dwarves are pretty hard to draw, and that's in no way a slight on the art. I really genuinely appreciate this art style. So there's a lot of action. First thing, he's a character, and he's in a Japanese temple, and he gets attacked by ninjas, which is always cool. Ninjas are cool. I mean, that's just a thing. It's just how it is. So he fights off the ninjas, and then they don't flee. He kills them all except for one who runs away, and he has these Japanese tiles, and I think they're magical. It doesn't really say how they're magical or what's going on, but there's 7 of them, so I think maybe they are tied in with the 7 superheroes that he's going to create. So this is the bad guy, the villain, one of the villains that gets away, and the Japanese master, old man master, keeps the tiles. I think the ninjas were there to kill him and steal the tiles. But then you go on, and at first it seems like it's not modern day, but then you do realize that it's modern day Japan. And there's this other. They introduce the kind of the main villain who is this is his lackey, his I don't know what you call him other than lackey. But they discuss whether or not they should attack him again, and he says the tiles power has been used up. So I'm not entirely sure about how that happens or what happens there. They probably go do a little bit of a backtrack in the next issues. But you see, there's a mirror that the big bad guy goes over to, and here's these supernatural creatures that are talking through the mirror, and that's pretty cool. Whole setup there, and they're saying just wait and bide your time, and we'll work on getting our offense ready to attack again. So basically, and then the superheroes are introduced. There's 7 of them. It's very difficult. He introduces 2 characters, fire and wind, because I mean they're all basically elemental type characters. So there's fire and wind, and they're flying around, and they're using this. It's heavily inspired by the X-Men, I would say. There's a little bit of banter between the characters, and just the way kind of they talk, and he gives off the exposition of what he's saying. The fire woman lands on an island because they're in Japan, flying around, and blows the island up. And they're trying to keep secretive about this, so the secret's out basically, and that's where the bad guy demons from the mirror find them again. I'm jumping forward a little bit, but the 2 are were out on an excursion, and they weren't supposed to be doing that, and so they were trying to stay hidden. But you can't really stay hidden if you blow up an island, and they had seen this cruise ship anyway. So they go back to the castle where the rest of the samurai are, and you can kind of see this guy is kind of see-through. So he's later you find that he's a spirit, and there's other spirits that are helping the old man. So they get back to the castle, and all of the characters are introduced. There's lots of introductions. It's like I said, it's very X-Men-y when there's just like a whole bunch of characters on the page, and there's little blurbs of who they are, what their powers are, blah blah blah. It's frankly, it's a little too much. I wish they would take I wish he had taken 4, 5, 6 different panels to introduce 2 or 3 characters at a time. That's how it is in a lot of the X-Men movies. Is they introduce these characters, they don't give them any kind of background, they just kind of say what their powers are, what their abilities are, and kind of say who they are, like Psylocke in the Apocalypse movie. They throw her in there. Same thing with Archangel. They throw them in there, and they expect you to know who they are. So I mean, we do, but some little bit of background would be nice. And when you're introducing a character, you can't just assume that people are going to be like, oh, this is an awesome new character, we're going to really love him. You have to give the reader a reason to love your characters. That's why Game of Thrones is so fantastic, because they build a character up just so much before something happens to them, whether it's good or bad. So you care about the character. They're not just one and done. They introduce them, they die. Or, you have to care about these characters. You have to introduce them in a way that you're going to be emotionally attached to these guys. Anyway, so that's a little bit of my problem with it. So there's banter between all of the characters, and you do learn about them through their banter and through their dialogue. So you've got your metal guy made of metal. You've got your Wolverine girl here, and they all have their doubts and stuff about what they're doing, and you realize that these spirits are helping them train them in their powers and their fighting techniques and stuff because they know that there's a battle coming, and they talk about this mist that they went through that gave them their powers, and he is training them and getting them ready to defend the world against these evil ninja slash oni. They send oni to save the world, I guess. And so they go through these different rituals. I really like this panel here. They actually show somebody with a CD. I mean, it dates the comic, but it's great because that's when took place. So you have a little bit more of introduction to the characters, but you're not really introducing them. They're just reiterating again who they are and or their names. That there again, you have to remember all of these names of all of these characters. There's 7 of them. I think it would have been better to introduce them maybe 3 in each comic or something like that, 3 or 4 in a comic. So anyway, you got they were revealed by her blowing up the island. So you have this announcer, this TV announcer talking about what happened on the island. And so you have the bad guys finding out where they are and what they're doing. So then they decide to attack the castle and kind of get the ball rolling of this whole world domination thing. So they're in a training operation. Like I said, very X-Men. If they had a danger room, they'd be using it. But there's nothing wrong with a good training sequence. I love training sequences. But they're mouthing off to each other, and they're having some heavy dialogue and stuff like that. So that's really cool. When all of the lights go out, and they don't know what's going on at first, so they think it's the generator. So they split up, and they're going to go try to repair the generator. And she's just about gotten it repaired when the Oni attack, which are these demon-like creatures. And they go to attack the old master here, and he looks like he's just kind of hanging out, but he's been waiting for them. He knows exactly what's going on, and he's kicks ass. He just kicks ass all the time. And so it goes back to the other characters and what they're doing and how they're handling being attacked by the Oni. And this one's being swallowed up by the demons, and the other ones just come in and they're attacking the attackers and trying to defend themselves, and they go through these fight scenes and stuff. And then it kind of ends where the guy who's the wind guy gets them all in a tornado and whisks the Oni either away or dead or whatever. And then they realize that their friend has been slashed to pieces. So I don't know if he's going to be dead, or if he's dead, because I mean he's pretty torn up pretty badly, or maybe that's his superpower is to regenerate. So I don't know. We don't know yet. And then there's 6 pages of advertisements, which is kind of unusual. I mean, I know that I think he probably had a set amount of pages that he was ready and willing to do, and I guess it's a good idea to advertise other comics, especially in this probably the most beautiful of their books. It looks to me like it's the nicest looking of all of their books. The Verdict, I actually got that when it was reprinted. Or I don't know if it was reprinted, or maybe I have the originals. But anyway, I think it's the prettiest of all of the books, and it's the most professional looking. The writing is pretty good. All of the characters have different voices about them, and the only problem I probably have is that it rushes things a little bit. It goes from their flying around to training to being attacked, and it rushes a little bit. And the characters, I don't find that they're particularly enjoyable to read. The guy that gets killed or almost killed or whatever, he really, like I said, I wish they had introduced him in a slower fashion, in a better fashion. And the fact that he only had like 6 or 7 pages of dialogue or whatever he did, I don't even know who he is or what he did, what he does, because so much information was just shoved down my throat that even a veteran comic book reader, as such as myself, I couldn't really grasp what was what was going on with these characters, what was their motivations and stuff like that. I think maybe it might have been better to have a flashback of his life and what was going on with him when he was recruited by the old man to become a protector. That might have been cool. Um, but I mean, the writing in general is pretty good, and especially some of the dialogue. He breaks some of the rules. Like they're talking here, and I don't know if he did the lettering. I think he probably did. But he goes around and he's saying this first and then this, but it all reads perfectly well. I never had to go back and reread it because even though it kind of breaks a few rules, that it still reads very nicely. Um, I also like just the way that the characters interact and like I said, it's very X-Men-y, but I love the X-Men. So how could that ever be a detraction from something that I'm reading? Is that I enjoy it. So like I said, all of the dialogue is very believable and it reads very easily. It was not a slog to read any of this, even the introductions of their powers and stuff like that. I totally was into it. I was into it, but I wasn't invested. Maybe give me a couple issues, 3 or 4 issues, I might become invested. And I think if I had gotten this now, if I off of the rack, I probably would have gotten the next issue or the issue after that because as I'm going to say, the art is really, really nice. You can see why he jumped from this almost directly to Marvel and DC. He's very professional looking. All of his and I mean apparently he drew and inked this, so his inking is really nice. His composition of the page is really beautiful. He uses a lot of panels, but that's perfectly okay because it doesn't detract from his art. He does have some pages where like a full page, full headshot is really it's really nice and everything flows beautifully. None of the narrative art is hard to decipher, and I love him breaking the panel borders with some of the characters. It makes it so that your comic looks like it's a lived in world. It's not just this stiff stuffy thing. I mean, this one doesn't even have any kind of panel border around it at all. And then he goes into the panels only they're um, like they're in a mirror. It's almost like he's showing different mirrors of each character. Like I said, he's got some nice figures, and his facial construction is nice, and he's got lots of emotion in his characters. They all look a little different, you know. So even this, like I knew this was a spirit as soon as I saw it. It wasn't just like, oh, is that Mirror Man or something like that? And people are flying around and they have a weight about them, which is really nice thing to see. And he's got some beautiful textures, like this beautiful. This is definitely a John Byrne, John Romita Jr. inspired type explosion, which is perfectly okay, perfectly great. I love this background after she's destroyed the island. You can see the ash and it's blowing in the wind. It's got some. He's got some really beautiful textures and some really beautiful lines to go with those beautiful textures. And so yeah, his line work is great. His proportions, all of his proportions are perfectly great. And I love his faces. I can't really think of a bad thing to say about this comic. It looks a little bit Pander Brothers ish, whereas I'm not going to say it's stiff, but it certainly has a rigid quality about it because none of the characters are stiff. they've got this rigid quality. I don't know what to really how to say it. Um, here's another great perspective. This is so hard because he's looking up, or you're below him, and you're seeing his nostrils and his eyes. That is very difficult. He makes a lot of panel decisions and illustration decisions that are very difficult, but he pulls them off beautifully. And he uses different panel types. It's not all just a grid, especially when it comes to action. When you've got this much action going on, you really want those different size, different angular panels to kind of really show off what's going on. Because then you can go back to the standard panel grid to kind of move the story along. But anyway, I really like his art, and the story was adequate. Maybe even a little bit more than adequate. But I would definitely check it out again. I would check out the second and third issues. So anyway, Samurai 7. Oh yeah, it's Samurai 7, but the only reason that they're called Samurai 7 is because, and it says it actually in here, that because there's 7 of them and they're in Japan. So I kind of wish that there had been some sort of other reason, like the original Seven Samurai, which is one of my favorite movies, and he's one of my favorite. Akira Kurosawa is one of my favorite directors and writers and creators. I mean, you've got the Seven Samurai, and there's a very specific story with each of the characters and why they become this group of samurai that are helping to protect the village. And in Magnificent Seven, they do the same thing. They move along with the same kind of plot points and character points that the Seven Samurai had, and that's kind of what I think what made both movies such successes. And I think if they had done a little bit more of that with this, then this might have been a little bit more of a success. I'm not saying it wasn't successful, because it's a beautiful book, looks very professional, and it's a very pretty book, and it reads really nicely. But the rushing of the character introductions, I would say, knocks it down substantially, because I just could not get invested in the characters soon enough. So I'm going to give this a 9. I was thinking that I would give it an 8 because of that, but that doesn't give me enough reason to knock it down to an 8, because it is so beautiful. It is such a nice looking book, and there's a lot to learn from this as an illustrator and as a storyteller. It's, I really enjoyed it. So if you guys like this kind of content and you like to see more quirky 90s, 80s type comics reviewed and gone through, then give this a like, and a all you new people, if you're checking this out, check if you could subscribe and hit the notification bell, and let me know if you've read Samurai 7 and or 2 and 3 and how they are compared to 1, and because I'd really like to know, because I don't have 2 or 3, but I'll probably check them out if at some point. But that's all for today, and thank you guys for watching, and have a great one. See you next time.